I kind of learned that nobody's going to accommodate you forever. You have to make your own way. You can be miserable or you can be happy. I guess I choose to see the positive side of things and I try to be happy. I think I actually have it pretty good. And I like to think, but what if the fact that I didn't have an easy time is why I have the resiliency that I have today? What if I had had an easier time and I thought the world owed me something? That just don't wallow in your own self-pity, I guess I should say. I mean, find one thing to hang on to that you can affect change and make things better.
Hey everyone, this is Rod Cate and welcome to this week's episode of Rocket Motivation. First, I'd like to thank some friends of mine for contributing to Rocket Motivation. Jason Darley of the Darley Law Firm, who does criminal defense work here in Mobile. Russ Copeland and Robert Hedge of Hedge Copeland Personal Injury Lawyers. And Jason Darley of the Darley Law Firm, criminal lawyers. And my friend Eddie McGee and the Stokes County, North Carolina Arts Council in Danbury, North Carolina. Their contributions make Rocket Motivation possible. This week's guest lost her left arm and shoulder to cancer when she was 10 years old. She's in her 40s now, but dealing with more adversity. The chemotherapy she underwent as a child has caused her kidneys to fail. She does dialysis every night to keep herself alive and is on the kidney transplant list. She's going to tell her story of dealing with these issues and staying positive and living a great life. Jana Rocker, welcome to Rocket Motivation.
Thanks for having me, Rod.
So, hey, Jana, tell us kind of where you are now in your life. Where do you live, your job, your family? How old are you?
Well, I just turned 50, so I appreciate you saying I'm in my 40s. I'll take that a little bit longer. I am currently in Gulfport, Mississippi, live here with my husband and my 5 cats, and I'm currently a data analyst, Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College. Been doing that for the last 5 years.
Okay. Well, let's go back to when you were 10 years old. You get cancer. Tell us about that and the result.
When I was 10 years old, I had been playing on a exercise machine, and I was pulling on it. And I had like a pain in my left shoulder after doing that, and went to the doctor, and they said, basically, you have a pull muscle. Don't worry about it. Just go take it easy, ice it. It'll get better or whatever. So we took their advice. Didn't do anything, and it kind of got a little bit worse. It was hurting more, growing a little bit, like I had swollen. So we went back a couple of weeks later to the same doctor, who kind of just looked at it again and said, oh, it's nothing. It's just an infection. Don't worry about it. So it was probably another week went by, and it was like the size of like a grapefruit and as hard as a rock on my left shoulder. And my parents were like, we got to do something. So they took me to a sports medicine specialist in Dallas, Texas, where I was from. And he took an x-ray, first thing he did. And he came back and he said, yeah, there's a very large tumor on her left arm. And he said, we need to biopsy this thing right away. And we need to figure out what's going on. And he was really good. He actually said, if this is what I think it is, you don't have time to wait to go to St. Jude. You don't have time to go to MD Anderson. You don't have time to get another opinion. You need to go see my buddy who's working in Galveston, Texas at the moment. He was working down there, and he was doing pioneering like limb salvage type procedures and working with cancer. And he said, you need to go down there and see. He's a good orthopedist. So we went down there, and we flew down there the next 2 days later. They had done a biopsy, and they did find the cancer. It was aggressive osteosarcoma. And so I went down there, and he said that I had a team, like an oncologist and an orthopedist. And his name was George Sireny. He actually was a pioneer he worked at Emory for a long time. Anyway, he basically saved my life because he said, we don't have time to wait. We have to do something. So they went in and they said, well, we're either going to have to amputate, we're going to save it, but we don't know till we get in what we're going to be able to do. So they basically went in and they found that it was too far advanced to save it. So they went ahead and amputated. I went from there to straight into chemotherapy afterwards. 2 weeks after the surgery, they started me on chemo.
And how long did you have to do chemo?
It was about a year and a half. It was supposed to have been about a 2-year regimen, but they had to cut it short because my kidneys failed. And luckily, my kidneys did bounce back at that point enough to where I was in like stage 3 kidney disease for years and years and years until they finally failed again 2 years ago for good.
Well, let me ask you this. You're 10 years old and you're going into your teenage years. Tell us about how you dealt with it.
I guess when you're a kid, like I was 10, and you have, they talk about having faith as a child. And my faith did get me through a lot. I still believe that. I mean, give it to God, basically. So I did. It's a lot easier to do when you're 10 years old than it is to do when you're an adult sometimes. But I kind of just went into it I had like a peace about it. And I kind of said, well, this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. So I'm going to go see what happens. And I remember the night before surgery, my biggest worry was I was sitting on the toilet, of all things, the night before surgery, and there was toilet paper, a roll of toilet paper next to me. And I remember I used to when I'd pull toilet paper off, I don't know if most people do this, but you hold it with one hand and pull it with the other hand and rip off. And I just remember looking at it and I was like, how am I going to do this with one hand? And I pulled the toilet and I was trying to do it and it kept rolling out, and I'm like, how am I going to do this? But that was actually my largest concern the night before my operation. And I was like, well, I guess I'll figure out a way. I have figured out a way.
Tell us about your teen years and kind of going into your, then your education. How did, not having your left arm and shoulder, how did it affect that part of your life?
As a teenager, I started to get a lot more self-conscious about it. Junior high was rough. There were a lot of bullies. I had people, they would make fun of you and typical junior high stuff amplified. And I didn't quite fit in and I didn't really know how to put people at ease at that point because I think I was still trying to put myself at ease half the time. I guess I was real self-conscious. I had an artificial arm that I got when I was about 12 or 13. I was actually one of the youngest people to get. I had like the Utah arm, which was like it would move. And I ended up not being able to really use it very well, but I wore it kind of cosmetically. And I wouldn't let anyone see me without it. Like I always had the thing on, even when it was like 112 degrees outside. I just remember looking back, I went on a church mission trip when I was 16. And I wore the thing. Everybody else is like out swimming and having a good time. And I'm sitting on the shore, wearing my arm because I was too self-conscious to take it off. I actually regret that now. I wish I would have not been that way, but there's nothing I can do. It was tough growing up and then going to college. I was still pretty self-conscious. I was a little bit more confident, at least when I got to college. I still wore the arm all the time. I don't wear it at all now. I actually didn't stop wearing it until I got into graduate school, like later in life. I was about 35 probably when I just decided, forget it, this is not worth it.
Well, and what was it about you reached 35 and you just decide I'm not wearing this arm anymore? What was it that got you to that point?
I think a lot of it was I did go when I went into grad school. I was nervous about being judged for only having one arm. Like I was afraid they would tell me, no, you can't do this. I'd had actually somebody tell me that in college at one point before. One of my professors actually said, you'll never work in a lab with one arm. And it did affect my career choices a lot. That's why I'm a computer scientist now, which is actually not a bad thing when you look back on it. But at the time I was upset. But I guess I had finally decided to go back to grad school. I was in biology. I went in and my professor was very instrumental. My major professor was very instrumental in kind of telling me, you know what, you need to it's okay to not wear it and you'll do fine. And so he was very helpful with that. He kind of gave me a little bit more confidence.
What did you want to do in a lab?
I did want to do cancer research. That's what I really wanted to do because obviously I was a cancer survivor and I was always drawn. As a kid, I remember when I had chemo and stuff, they would tell me what I was getting and I actually would look it up in the physician's desk reference. I wanted to know exactly what was going on. And I always had an interest in science and biology and medicine. But I didn't think I could be a medical doctor because I was just that kind of stress. Not only just having one arm and not being able to like intubate somebody kind of thing. I was worried about that pressure, but also worried about just psychologically being a doctor. So I thought, well, I'm going to go into research. So that's kind of what I wanted to do. And I had already finished at this point my bachelor's degree in biology. in preparation to do research. And I was starting my master's in 1994 when that professor told me that. He's like, you need to pursue computer science instead. You can't work in a lab.
Well, looking back on that, I mean, that seems like a harsh thing to tell somebody, but do you look at that as a positive that he did that? I guess bluntly honest or a negative?
Yeah, I look at it as a positive now. For years, I did not. For years and years, I was very upset. And of course, a lot of people were like, oh my God, how dare he tell you this? And now I kind of look at it, though, and it was real. I mean, you have to be realistic. The fact that he pointed me to computer science, I do have kind of a natural ability with it. Like, I'm really good at it, and I always was. And when I did it as electives and things. So he kind of pointed me to pursue that. And I'm glad I did, because it is the wave of the future. I mean, now that's what I do now. And there are so many, everything depends on it. So I'm kind of glad I did.
So you're rocking along with your life, and then you start having some kidney failure. Tell us about that and what you got to do every night.
Well, it was 2017. Yeah, I was doing great. Everything was going well, working and everything else. And I went to a dinner and I ate some oysters that were bad. And I knew at the time they were a little bit runny. They were fried, but they were kind of runny. And I had some questions about them, but I ate them anyway, like an idiot. And I think Vibrio was really big. It was 2017 in the summer, and I ate them. And I got really sick, and I ended up in the hospital. They never confirmed Vibrio, but I suspected it based on my symptoms. But anyway, I was in there for a week. I was dehydrated. My kidneys started shutting down, and they bounced back a little bit, but then they just kept progressing downward from that point. It took them about 2 years to get to the point where I needed dialysis. I got sicker and sicker, and then my doctor finally actually told me, you need to start dialysis. And I was a little bit I was kind of terrified of it because they scare you to death. I got a second opinion. I actually went to Emory in Atlanta and got a second opinion. And they also said, yes, you need to start dialysis. So I chose to do, they call it peritoneal dialysis, which is I have like a little catheter implanted, and I just plug it into the machine at night. And it fills me up with fluid and drains it like 4 times. It takes about 8 hours overnight. And luckily I can do that and still like work. So I do it overnight, get up in the morning, disconnect, and go to work.
You're doing an 8-hour dialysis every night. That is basically
every single night.
That is your kidney function. Is the dialysis is what's keeping you alive?
Pretty much, yeah. I might make it. I don't know how long I would make it without it. I have some residual function, but I would get fluid overloaded pretty quickly and go downhill. Yeah, if I didn't do it. So I never miss a treatment. I've never missed one in 2 years. Right. So I do it every single night.
Have you ever had the kind of the why me? Look, it's one thing to have cancer as a child, and I lost my left arm and left shoulder, but I've worked hard throughout my life. I've kept a positive attitude. I've gone to graduate school. I've got a great job. And then all of a sudden this hits.
Well, I mean, yeah, sometimes it happens. Sometimes I will do that. I'm like, why? And I have to sit back, and sometimes I just wonder, you can't make this stuff up. I couldn't, if I were writing a book about my life, I don't know if I could make up everything that has happened to me. And I a lot of times I actually say, believe in, like some people believe you have like soul contracts before you come to the earth. It's like, I must have told God, hey, I don't want to be bored. I want you to keep it moving. Like, I don't want to be bored in this life, because I am not. I can tell you that. It's kind of insane if you think about it. So many things have happened, but I just kind of keep going.
We've all got issues in our life. Based on what you've got going on, I mean, what is it internally about you that you just keep moving forward?
I really don't feel like I don't have a choice. I mean, I kind of feel you have a choice of either you can be miserable and just kind of, as I say, have a low vibration, but you can be miserable or you can be happy. And I guess I choose to see the positive side of things, and I try to be happy. I think I actually have it pretty good if you think of my circumstances. I mean, I was able to go to school. I actually have a good mind. I'm able to work. I'm able to contribute. to society, contribute to my job. I do like helping other people. I think I am hypersensitive sometimes to helping like other people, and I want to be useful, and I feel like I need to be useful. And I remember as a kid even, and a lot of cancer kids will do this, where you're throwing up and you're losing your hair and you're sick with chemo and your mom or dad are over there having a bad day, watching you. And you're like, no, I'm okay. Are you okay? Like I'd be sitting there throwing up and I'd look up and be like, are you okay? I'm okay. It's almost, I guess, a trauma response, they say, or something. But maybe that's what my positivity is a trauma response.
What about your parents' influence on you when you were a kid and going through the cancer and lost your arm? What type of influence did they have on you as to kind of as the person you've become now, who is somebody who can handle adversity?
Well, they were I have to give it to them. I often think that it had to be harder for them than it was for me, because they had to watch me go through it. I can't even imagine. I don't have kids, but I can only imagine what that would be like. And to be helpless, to feel kind of helpless. But my parents both have really strong faith in God. And my dad, so he gave it to God early on. I mean, I think he tells the story of he was just like crying in a bathroom one time and he just gave it up to God and he got this peace, from it. But they were very, I guess, tough love, and that had to be hard for them. But like at one point, I remember they bought like a new refrigerator that had like the little water thing in the door. This was like 1983 or whatever. And I was like, I need a glass of water. I can't get up and get water. Can you get it for me? And my parents are like, we bought this refrigerator. You can walk over there, get your water yourself. And I did. And I learned how to do it. Really glad they did not coddle me at all. I mean, they taught me how to be independent. Sometimes I think I've learned to be a little too independent. I kind of learned that nobody's going to accommodate you forever. You have to make your own way.
Well, going through what you went through with losing your arm and then what you're going through now with the dialysis every night, and you keep going, you're living your life. You go to work every day. What have you learned about yourself going through all your adversity?
I've learned I do have a lot of resilience. I have resiliency, and that is something kind of take it for granted. I think everyone has it, but then I will admit that I meet some people and I realize they don't. And it's like, I feel bad for them, like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry you don't have it. But I guess I'm happy that I actually seem to have this. I don't know exactly what magic formula has given it to me. I mean, like I said, I do attribute a lot to my faith in God. And I do feel like I'm here for a reason. Kind of feel like I've seen that I have inspired a lot of people throughout my life. And that actually encourages me a lot. And I kind of feel like I keep going.
I want to talk about this concept that we spoke about, before the show, and I'd never heard this concept before. It's called toxic positivity. It's something you taught me. So, and just so for the listeners, I want to read this is the definition that you sent me. It's toxic positivity. It's the overgeneralization of a happy, optimistic state that results in denial, minimization, and invalidation of the authentic human emotional experience. Did you first get introduced to this concept?
Well, I've actually had various people on the internet, but different exchanges on the internet with people who have actually accused me of being toxic positivity and invalidating people's feelings and saying, well, I don't let my disability get me down. And that they say, well, that's ableist of you to say that because sometimes it does get you down. And I'm like, well, and the funny thing is a lot of these people who tell me this, they are not disabled. Now, they may be parents or friends, mostly parents of people who are disabled, I put it that way. But I'm like, I don't feel like I'm artificially trying to invalidate anything. I'm just being a realist and saying that, like, you can't depend on the world to accommodate you. I have lots of friends and I love them dearly, but they have, they fight for their accommodations for their kids in school and things like that. And that's good. And they said, well, if you'd have had those kind of accommodations, maybe you would have had an easier time. And I like to think, but what if the fact that I didn't have an easy time is why I have the resiliency that I have today? What if I had had an easier time and I thought the world owed me something? It's kind of an example is like going to work. well, I did have a little bit of an accommodation in high school. I had a little extra time between classes to go to my locker because it takes me a little longer to get dressed. It takes me a little longer to pick things up and carry things around. And so they gave me a little extra time. But my first job, I think I remember thinking, oh, maybe I can ask for a little extra time to be late to work because it takes me longer to get dressed. And their answer is, you just get up earlier. You need to get up earlier. It's on you. And that's how the world is. And if you're not ready for it, it can be a really cruel place. You have to kind of be ready for it.
Well, it's almost like with toxic positivity. If you actually accept where you are in life and don't kind of wallow or have a bunch of self-pity about yourself, if you are accepting and you actually enjoy your life regardless of your circumstances, I guess with this toxic positivity, it sounds like there's something wrong with you.
I know, they accuse you of that. And it's like, I'm sorry that I am not, unhappy. It's very strange. It's a very strange concept to me because I feel like it's like one of those things you have to think about that, whether I legitimately am happy. I'm a happy person. I don't know. I guess I see humor in a lot of things too that a lot of people don't. And I try to find humor in stress. I don't know. Maybe that's part of it too.
And you and I have spoken, and you know my story. I broke my neck playing high school football and was paralyzed from the neck down. And I've lived since I was 15 years old with paralysis. But I've got a great life. I'm 99% of the time extremely happy. And this whole toxic positivity thing that you told me about, it just kind of blew me away. I guess those that espouse the toxic positivity line, I guess the phrase "suck it up" probably doesn't go over very well with them.
Oh, no, it does not. And I say it a lot. Suck it up, buttercup. But yeah, that's kind of my go-to thing because sometimes you just have to, and you do. And it builds something within you that I don't know. There's no other way to build it other than to go through it. It's kind of like they talk about, I guess, the iron in the forge. Kind of situation.
Well, let me ask you this. What advice would you give? Somebody's, going through some tough times, and it can be anything. And if you're going to give them advice to going through adversity, what would you tell them?
I would tell them just try to find one thing that you can act on. If there's something you can control and act on it, just try to make a plan to act on that. Even if it's a small thing, just something like if you're having trouble with something, just get out of bed in the morning, and maybe try to give back to somebody else, like be the change you want to see in the world, but, be something to someone else if you can. Give what you can to someone else, and that it does tend to come back to you. And try to think of other people as well as yourself, but just don't wallow in your own self-pity, I guess I should say. You almost have to just kind of find one thing to hang on to that you can affect change and make things better.
Right. That's great advice. It's enjoyable for me to talk to someone like you who we have kind of the same philosophy on life, in that it's you play with the hand you're dealt and you make the best of it. Just because of your situation, you don't get an extra card. You don't get to discard an extra one. You play with the same rules that everybody does.
Yep.
Well, Jana, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Your story is so inspirational, and the way you've handled everything, it's great. What I like to do with all my guests, I like to give them the parting shot. So anything, based on your years of dealing with what you've dealt with, kind of a final advice that you can give to the listeners, now's the time to do it.
All you can do is what you can do. I kind of play the hand you're dealt, and will say that my faith in God has really helped me a lot in my life. You can find friends and family. I'm very fortunate to be blessed with great friends, family. I guess the biggest thing would be to reach out to people. Don't isolate yourself. Give people the benefit of the doubt too. If you feel like I feel different, people look at me. I try to break the ice a lot, put myself in their situation if they're uncomfortable. You don't see everything as, it's not all about you all the time. Sometimes they don't know what to say. or it's not that they don't like you, it's that they just don't know how to talk or something like that. But it's not always all about you. You have to kind of think about where they're coming from, where everybody is.
Right. I think what you just said was great, because it's not, even though, we may be a bit different, it's not all about us. I mean, it is about other people. That's some great stuff to end the show with. Janice, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Thanks for listening to the show. If you're interested in getting my book, Get Back Up, just go to Amazon and put in Get Back Up and my name, Rod Cate, and it'll pop right up. I would love it if you would subscribe to the podcast and rate and review the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. I would really appreciate it if you'd share it with a friend. I would like as many people to hear my message as possible. And we'll see you next week. Never give up and always get back up.